God help the man. God help the man. This is my own song too. It's a lyrical song. I haven't really put music to it. These are just things you hear in your head. It's like, where do you get ideas? Well, I know how to percolate ideas. I read a lot, put a lot of facts in. I have a lot of emotions bubbling, and then I have this other narrative I'm getting from pop culture and from like bullshit just covering up injustices. And then so all of a sudden I get a line in my head and I just run with that. So this one is: God help the man who has someone to blame. President Bush and his sad man Hussein. One got elected, the other got hanged, and 3 million ran from their homes. American Rome. 700 bases to keep the world safe for BP, for Exxon, for Chase Manhattan Bank. We called it socialism when a country disobeyed. Now we have a holy war to thank. Boy, we need you to deploy in Iran. We captured Saddam and we killed Taliban. And we'll be killing some more of their terrorist friends. When killing for peace, the good fight never ends. There's oil in that there land, and every Muslim woman, child, and man is either with us or against us. If they don't understand, they will when the bobs land. You want to make a terrorist, you make a man run. You come into his country, kill his daughter, kill his son. Build 100 bases, do whatever that you want. The terrorist is the guy with a smaller bomb. Give me a reason why we can't hang the president for treason and the rest of his gang. $1 trillion for a war that's insane. And when the victims have the sense to collect their revenge, you only have yourself to blame. This boy says he's not going to die for his country. This boy says he won't go commit crimes for his country. This boy says his mother won't cry when his country demands that she give up the life of her son. No, this boy says he's not going to die for his country. Keep your gun. So this, I forgot some of the things I put in here. God help the man. President Bush and a sad man Hussein. Instead of Saddam Hussein, sad man Hussein. One got elected, the other got hanged. They were kind of both on the same side for a minute there. George Bush Sr. was the director of the CIA and what was he the director of the CIA? I could look that up, but not too long after the CIA helped Saddam in his coup. 3 million ran from their homes. At that time, I think that was around what the refugee. Iraq only has 25 million or so people. California is more populous than Iraq. So imagine 3 million people fleeing California. It'd be kind of a big deal. Imagine half of the middle class in California fleeing. Imagine that. That in California, half of the people who are technically middle class leave. And then imagine that Republicans and Democrats are instigated into a civil war to the point that in our major cities, in like San Francisco and Los Angeles, they have to put up concrete blast barriers to keep us from killing each other, which is what happened in Baghdad. They basically had to segregate them ethnically. And imagine that a foreign force comes here to occupy us. So Japan comes over and says, you know what, California, we're trying to save you for your own good because you guys are killing each other and we want to help you. But instead, they go and they go to Fresno, to the Central Valley, and they took over all of our agriculture. They call California the breadbasket of the United States. We make so much food, we could feed the world from California alone, and we can house them in Texas. Those are real numbers. California can grow enough food to feed the world. So Japan comes over and says, they're only an island, they can't grow all their food. So they're like, California, we have to take over your Central Valley and take over your food supply. But it's for the stability of global food markets because you guys are killing each other, obviously. But then it turns out that the Japanese are instigating us to kill each other. They're arming the Republicans and they're arming the Democrats. But we can't figure this out because for some reason they're going around killing our intellectuals. So there's these death squads going around killing our political leaders and our intellectual leaders. Professors start dying. It's no longer safe to be on the street. There's curfew. Remember when Enron had the rolling blackouts in California? There's no electricity. There's random fires, which were happening now, I guess, too. So we don't have the ability to connect the dots because our civil society is falling apart. But every now and then you get little evidence that like the Japanese might not have been involved or they might not have been conducting the death squads targeting our intellectuals, but it seems like their intelligence was offering lists. They're the ones who were giving the lists of intellectuals to be targeted. They're the ones, for some reason, the arms between the Democrat and Republican fanatical factions that are fighting each other, the arms seem to be coming from Japan. And also, the worst tortures and abuses seem to have ties to Japanese intelligence. But we still can't figure this all out. But then the biggest red flag, though, is that they're in our Central Valley controlling our food supply, which used to be our biggest strength. That was our resource that we fed everyone in the world through our agriculture. But Japan says that they're over here for our protection, even though they went straight to our agriculture and took that over. And even though, so out of all that chaos and destruction, half of the middle class leaders, who's left? Well, the poor and the rich. And the rich are holed up in these enclaves with these. Well, if the rich were smart, they got out too. But the ones who stayed are holed up in these enclaves with glass walls and protection and barriers and private security. And then the poor are just, well, there's just even more and more violence and craziness. And then now you have more people listening to talk radio and crazy conservative. And we're becoming more and more divided and factionalized. There's a word for this. It's called Balkanization. Because we did this to the Balkans, the Ottoman Empire. We went in there and we took an empire and we split it up into pieces. And Lawrence of Arabia had a huge part in that. Lawrence of Arabia, the British, when they went in and then right after that, they tried to occupy Iraq for a while. But you go into a unified society or culture and you split it up into factions, pit them against each other. The CIA has a long history of instigating civil wars in Latin America, doing the same thing. And remember, those same people who did that in Latin America also went to Iraq from the same institutions. The School of the Americas. Are we training people from the School of Americas to go into Iraq? Because we've been doing that into the rest of the world. I think they changed the School of America's name. What's the name of the School of the Americas now? It was the training ground in the United States for all of our torturers and killers that we wanted to send to other countries to instigate civil wars. School of the Americas. Got enough bad press that they had to change the name, just like Blackwater got enough bad press. Oh, the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. Well, the School of the Americas was rolled off the tongue too much. Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. That's like a rule, right? Too many syllables and people won't. I don't even remember it, and I just said it. The Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. Yeah, that's just more of the part. Here we go. The School of the Americas is still exporting death squads. But this isn't the dominant culture. This isn't the stuff that Pete Davidson reads. But when he does pay attention, if you're outside the dominant culture, oh, he's going to give you shit. He's going to make a joke on SNL about you. Because if he pays attention enough to notice that you're far outside the dominant culture, well, shit, if you got on Pete Davidson's radar, then obviously you must be wrong. Or it's not that he's a fuckboy who doesn't have the mental fucking integrity to actually pick up a book and learn about the world in which he lives. It's not that he's so much of a loser that he can't keep the love of a good woman. It's that you're wrong because you don't agree with the people that he runs with. Yeah, fucking blow yourself, Pete, right? But here we go. School of the Americas. Students, you know what? That's wrong. It's wrong to be so emotional because Pete has feelings. And, he might be going through something right now in life. And he's obviously gone through other things in life. You can't forget that people have feelings. He's a comedian, so I feel like he could take it, because comedians usually have thick skin. But if you ever hear this for whatever reason, Pete, I'm sorry. And you're a human being and I love you. And if I see you in person, there's a standing offer of a hug. But that's not an excuse to be ignorant. Just don't be ignorant. You know, and also, Pete, one guide to another, advice for the future. The more solid you get in your life, in character, in getting your feet under you and thinking for yourself and creating your own opinions about the world, not just regurgitating what other people say, good women will respect that. I mean, they'll always be, like girls are trying to get with you for money or other stuff, but strength of character is an aphrodisiac. So that's just my advice to you. That might help you in the future. I won't speak on it. That's why I don't want to speak about people's names. And I mentioned Joe Rogan too, and I mentioned Ariana Latte and like people's lives and stuff. It's like I don't know these people. I have enough on my plate trying to figure out the world without trying to figure out the personalities that live within this world as well. Between 1999 and 2010, Chilean governments sent a total of 1,205 recruits to the school. So that's Chile. Yeah, I just was looking up an article. 2015, the School of the Americas is still exporting death squads. The school, South American militaries have been sending soldiers to the U.S. for ethics and human rights training for years. But history shows that many of these alumni go on to become notorious torturers and murderers, not defenders of peace. So they go there for ethics and human rights training. Is that not Orwellian? But we don't speak about that. We want Obama to shut down Guantanamo, but not the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. I thought they go there for ethics and human rights training. Why do we call it the Institute for Security Cooperation? That's funny. How does this relate to what the fuck we were talking about? Oh, I guess Please Don't Draft Me, Pastor. Please Don't Draft Me, Pastor was about self-delusion. And yeah, we're getting into, now that I have an idea about what the actual reality is, I'm feeling very confident and all right, like this is a framework by which I can explain the world better than what's been given to me ever since that underground newspaper in high school. It's like I had a sense that there was a lot of bullshit around, and I peeked through enough doors to like start calling it. I'm going to call it, this is bullshit. Now I have to translate this into something that has cultural currency. Oh no, this isn't Please Don't Drive Me, Pastor. This is God Help the Man. See? These videos are supposed to be a majority about the work and where I was at the time. And I can rant some, but it shouldn't be a majority rant. God help the man who has someone to blame. President Bush, sad man Hussein, 3 million ran from the room. That's what we were talking about. We were talking about the refugees, and then I said that whole, what if this was California? 700 bases to keep the world safe. We're at over 1,000 now. The American empire is supported through over 1,000 bases around the world. If Russia had 1,000 bases around the world, that would be an act of war. That would be the Russia is controlling the world. So now you understand Russian posturing. Russia understands that we're the empire that controls the world. The only reason they're not at constant war with us is because they have to be benefiting from it somehow. Even then, like speaking about Russian aggression in a vacuum without acknowledging the American empire makes them look really aggressive. But once you acknowledge American empire, you realize just how defensive their posturing is. All they're asking is a buffer between them and NATO. And NATO has taken all the buffer states between Russia and NATO. And Russia said that's a red line. So they took the Ukraine. They need a buffer between our militarism because they don't think it's beyond us to invade them. I don't think it's beyond us to invade them. There's Republican drafts to invade Russia. There's Republican leaders on the record saying that eventually we're going to have to go into Russia. So that culture really respects chess and games of strategy. They operate, it seems like, on a lot more realpolitik level. It's like we operate on a lot more narrative, superficial bullshit. We export culture. We export Marvel movies talking about how Captain America is right and violence solves problems in order to hide the actual reality over here of our real historic record. Russia doesn't do that. Russia's a lot more cold because as you become more vulnerable and as you suffer more, Russia arguably has suffered more than the United States in the 20th century. You have to be more real. That's what I brought up about last time I'll mention it, about Ariana and Pete. Ariana has, in love at least, maybe suffered more. She loved an addict, which is a heartbreaking thing to do, and then watched him pass. I've loved an addict. She made it out. I didn't watch her pass. She watched people pass. She told me a couple months ago she had a nightmare about one of her exes who overdosed. And it was this like the imagery was crazy in the dream. But loving someone who loses their life to an addiction is a haunting thing. Um, but that suffering makes you respect truth more, I think. You realize it puts things in perspective, and you have less patience or tolerance for deception, either self-deception or the deception of others. I think Russia is on that kick. Is that so? They're just like, you know what? We're just gonna play the game. If you want to play the game, great, but it is what it is. Um, we called it socialism when a country disobeyed. That's self-evident. You know, I haven't read the Communist Manifesto. I haven't looked into socialism or communism yet. I don't think these older ideologies have much relevance in the modern world. I think I've learned enough about economics. Not enough, but my introduction to economics was living in the economy, functioning as a broker with my real estate license, making money. I'm going to read theory, but practical experience has always been more valuable to me than theory. Then I'm going to read the theory and find out where the theory aligns with my practical experience, and then where the theory might be theory for theory's sake. But from an early age, hanging around the smart kids in high school and then going to college, I knew the limits of intellectuals and how intellectuals can fool themselves. So, but not just that. So that's one reason why I haven't read a lot of the Western canon and a lot of economic theory, including the Economist or the Communist Manifesto, because I didn't want to taint myself while I was still forming my own opinions, and now I'm going to compare those against what's come before. Because I want to form my own opinions, but I also have to humble myself to the fact that I might have reinvented the wheel sometimes, or I might have some major blind spots. So now I feel like in my 30s, it's time to bring my philosophy to the world, compare it to others, and really flesh it out, because that's what like the doing the heroin was. Like, who am I? I'm strong enough to not let that's not going to catch me up. I'm strong enough to not have a girl catch me up. I'm strong enough to not have money corrupt me. Like I've tested myself certain ways, objectively, objective measures always in my life. But another reason why I didn't read socialism, communist stuff is because we use it as a tool to vilify people. So it's like one of the reasons why I had to create my own ideas about economics and the world without it is because if you just read any history, you realize how much is used as an excuse for violence. And it's like, well, fuck, dude, that puts a target on my back. That sucks. But Karl Marx said that by the end of his life, he wasn't a Marxist. So by the end of his life, he wasn't happy with where people were taking his ideology. So Freud, I haven't really read much Freud, but I probably should. I've read some Jung and some other stuff, but that's another thing. I want to get into CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but intuitive knowledge and wisdom before I go to the heavy hitters, because the heavy hitters have such a strong ego that if you only read them, or if you read them before you form your own opinion, you might just end up parroting them. And I find that with a lot of friends and people I run across, where it's like, we agree with each other a lot, but I can tell that they're worshiping these guys a little bit too much. If you're going to dance with an intellectual of history, with like Plato, I only read Plato this year. I really love him and love some things in it, but then other things I criticize with. But the only reason I could be critical of him is because I have my own opinion about certain things. But if I had read him before I lived life, I think I would worship him more. I would perform the intellectual fallacy that I think most people do when they get indoctrinated in our institutions, which is they put these people on pedestals. And like I think it was Gloria Steinem said, a pedestal is as confining as any cage. You're not going to get the woman of your dreams by putting her on a pedestal. I learned, you don't have to listen to me, but I learned from firsthand experience. It's a dance, it's a back and forth. If someone doesn't respect you, you can't. It's really hard to make love to someone you don't respect. So you need to earn that respect. It's good to be compassionate and nice to people, but it's a dance. So when I read Plato, it's like, I like a lot of stuff, but like some of the stuff I'm like, no, not really. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe he's wrong, but like, so I haven't read, what did I say? That was the socialism one. We call the socialism when people disobey. I can't wait to read it though. I'm going to read some good communist theory and find out where I agree and disagree. Boy, we need to deploy in Iran. Iran's hanging over our head because those plans are definitely drawn up to invade Iran. Captured Saddam, killed Taliban, killing more of their terrorist friends. When you're killing for peace, the good fight never ends. Isn't that a truism? Killing for peace. Well, it's like, and that's something I came up with last year. I was like, what about the freedom to be peaceful? When can we have the freedom to not be militarized? Because if you claim that our freedom is earned only through militarism, we'll never have the freedom just to be peaceful. When you're killing for peace, the good fight never ends. There's oil in that our land. Every Muslim woman, child, and man is either with us or against us. And if they don't understand, they will when the bombs land. How can you argue against that logic? You're either with us or against us. Says who? Says our fucking firepower. Well, alright. You want to make a terrorist, and now I'm trying to put myself in the position of someone who, like what we did with California. You want to make a terrorist, you make a man run, come into his country, kill his daughter, kill his son. How would you feel if that happened to you? There's plenty of examples of this happening. Build 100 bases. You know there's over 100 bases we built in Iraq. You want to talk about an occupying army and invading force? How are we just going to, when people say pull the troops out and dismantle the bases? Like we built at one point, I don't know if they're still there, but we built over 100 bases in that country. This is how you do shit like this. How you colonize other countries. It's that when people say, let's invade Iraq and bring democracy to there, those words mean nothing. That's not how the world works. That's like me saying, let me fucking put bubble gum in my fucking gas tank so that way I could like run on fucking like, that makes no sense either. That was a terrible metaphor. But like, that's not how the world works. That's like, you don't invade a country to bring democracy to it. You promote social and civic institutions to promote democracy. Invasion and war aren't tools of democracy. They're tools of conquest. Yeah, Genghis Khan fucking invaded Baghdad to bring democracy to it. But that's why I like those people in history, because I like real people and I like honesty, because I could deal with violence. I've dealt with violence in my life. I've had my life threatened. I've been attacked. I fucking had a metal baseball bat. Some guy came at me with a metal baseball bat and fucking dinged me in the head. But like, it's the violence that comes in the name of peace and friendship. Like that guy who came at me with a bat, we're not friends anymore. I made my peace. I saw him just recently and shook his hand again just to make sure he knew that we're not good, but I'm not looking for him. I'm not, if he's nervous, that's on him. If you act like a dick like that, you should be nervous. If you fucking attack people, that's your reward in life, to always be looking over your shoulder. But I mean, like Genghis is like, why did he raise Baghdad? They disrespected him. He sent out a caravan of goods. He said what did he say? He said the power in the east respects the power in the west. He was in the east and the caliphate in Baghdad was in the west. He was basically saying, I'm honoring you. Here are my gifts. Let's do trade. Let us respect each other. To the caliphate's credit, Genghis Khan had a history of destroying anyone he came across. So maybe the caliphate didn't really take him at his word, but he didn't have to kill his messengers. Genghis wasn't the type of man to intimidate. So he killed his messengers, and that's what kind of pissed him off. So they came in and they destroyed. But he didn't say, I'm coming to Baghdad in order to bring in peace. He was who he said he was. And then I think he was even more violent than he said he was too. But he never pretended like he was a bringer of peace. That type of deception and lack of self-awareness, and that deception brings a whole nother load of psychological problems, I think. Violence is one thing, but self-deception is another thing. And that creates psychosis and split of identity and derealization and some of the things, if you look around at our society, what we're suffering from in a society, I think relates to this lack of a historic record, an honest historic record. The bullshit is becoming so evident and so hard to swallow that we're literally being driven mad, individually and socially, through all of this hypocrisy and craziness. I wanted to bring up Pete Davidson one more time, and I'm not going to. Trying to figure out how to be a public figure myself, and trying to figure out when to run my mouth, and when to be humble. But this is all brainstorming, and why would anyone look at my brainstorming videos but me anyways? Terrorist is a guy with a smaller bomb. That's obvious. That's just like a saying. Give me a reason why we can't hang the president for treason and the rest of his gang. I don't really want to hang these people, but they justice is calling. Men of honor have long memories. $1 trillion, a war that's $6 trillion now. I need to revise that. When the victims have the sense to collect their revenge. Stuff like that scares me. I'm like, I think the art always you say what the feeling is, because that's what the feeling is. But that's how much I care is like when I see these people being victimized and then I see them lashing out, do I really blame them? That's tough because now it's like, do I support the troops in my country? Do I support the victim, people who are being victimized by like our violence? And I just stay out of it. I'm like, I'm the broker of peace, I think. People like myself are the ones who are trying to make the peace between both, and that's what the reconciliation and truth and reconciliation does. It says that like we're going to reclaim the historic record and we're going to seek justice, but we're not going to seek retributive justice. I'm an American. Why would I want our country to suffer? But perpetrating this cycle of violence and keeping it going is causing not only our victims but ourselves to suffer. So stopping it is the best thing I could do for myself and for other people in my country. But when I empathize with the victims when they're seeking their revenge, that's when I'm like, all right, so where's the line? Because what if they seek their revenge by attacking me? What if I'm the casualty of a suicide bomb of someone who says it was because we invaded Iraq? Am I still going to sympathize with that person, or am I going to be like, all right, now this is too far, this is personal? I don't know. This is where that Eastern philosophy comes in. It's not moral. It's just a pattern. We've initiated, and that's I was on a mushroom trip, and that's why I do these mushrooms, and then I know my head is clear and thinking because I do it more and more, and I'm still able to think and process. I'm just increasing my sensitivity, but since I don't have contradictions or conflictions, there's still a clarity there. And then now you have a great sensitivity, but with a clarity, and you see these connections where I'm like, wow, we're just doing all these tripwires, all of these, we're fucking with the honor of so many people that no shit they're gonna fucking come back and like attack our country on a personal level. And like we have to, it's like if I was in a family, the easiest metaphor would be if I was in a family and I have a younger brother who's a dipshit and he just keeps picking fight after fight. I'm gonna defend my brother. He's my younger brother. Like it's me and my family against me and my brother against a cousin, me and my cousin against the world. So I don't care what my younger brother did. I'm not gonna, if he's gonna get jumped by a bunch of people, I'm not gonna be like, all right, I don't have a younger brother, by the way, but I'm not gonna be like, all right, he deserves it. Even if I think he deserves it, at that moment, I'm defending his ass and I'm getting him out of there. But afterwards, I'm like, what the fuck were you doing? I'm gonna, this is what an older brother probably would do, is you fucking protect him in front of strangers, but alone you fucking whoop his ass even worse than the strangers would. If you ever get me in that situation again, and yeah, when family doesn't have a right to put you in danger, but when you're in danger, family's family. And that's, I guess, how I feel about America. Just because I'm an American doesn't give my president or other people the right to fucking put me in danger. And these wars of aggression around the world are putting us in danger. This is documented by the people who study this. My voice is going up because the emotions. Terrorism has been going up ever since George Bush's voluntary war of aggression. Terrorism is high and to the right. If terrorism was a startup, George Bush Jr. is a unicorn. His investment in the Iraq War has exploded terrorism around the world. And we only have ourselves to blame. We have to rein in these assholes. This is our family, our American family, and our younger brother idiots are doing things that now we have to account for because we're a family. So we have to, if we don't police them, no one else will. And we don't want the world to police them and us because they're not family. So they're going to be harder than we are. So a lot of this is out of love. It's hard language, but it's something that I feel needs to be said. It's just character shit. This boy says he's not going to die for it. And then this is, I guess, my own personal thing. I read Johnny Got His Gun, I think around this time. So that's where I got that line, keep your gun. Because at the end of Johnny Got His Gun, Dalton Trumbo, he wrote that art. That art was so passionate and so sincere that he wrote that. And then during World War II, he bought into the idea that that was a noble war. I don't. If you look at the history, I don't think it was a noble war. But he bought into that, so he stopped the publishing of that book during that time. And I think that was around World War One that he wrote that. But World War II, he stopped the publishing because he was worried that it would be too pacifist and it would undermine the war effort. Which maybe, at that time, I don't know, was that war ever existential against the United States? It didn't threaten us. No one's going to invade us. If we wanted to stop Hitler, just stop funding him. His funding came from the West. If you read that book, The Conjuring of Hitler, and you follow the money, his funding came from the global Western finance syndicate. And that's my view based off of what I read. And then also, if you want to stop the Holocaust, just take in the Jews as refugees. We didn't do that either. So we didn't cut off his money supply, and we didn't take in the victims. So it wasn't just like anything. The Civil War, if Lincoln wanted to free the slaves, he could have bought them. Lincoln could have purchased all the slaves from the South for cheaper than the cost of the Civil War. The Civil War was for other reasons. It was for a unified, central federal government. If we hadn't fought the Civil War, slavery probably would have been undermined through economic reasons. Slavery and that type of institutional violence requires a lot of authority to manage, and so if you undermine that authority, but I mean, even Lincoln himself said he didn't fight the war for slavery, and he wouldn't make the war about slavery. It was about the Union. So yeah, wars aren't noble. They're usually a con and a way to transfer power and money. Same old thing. This boy says he's not going to die for his country, so this is me taking my stand against all that bullshit. I'm not going to die for the country. The boy says he's not going to go commit crimes for his country. What is the ethical stand in the face of these false narratives? This boy says his mother won't cry when his country demands that she give up the life of her son. That's just setting up the last line, and it's a nice image. No, this boy says he's not going to die for his country. Keep your gun. And I believe Dalton Trumbo said, "You plan the wars, you masters of men. Plan the wars and point the way. And we will point the gun." And that was his little subtle fuck you. It's like, yeah, keep planning. You who say that you own society and say that you get to tell us who to fight and what to do and how we should sacrifice our lives in the name of what you claim is noble. You claim, but it's never borne out in your actions. Keep talking all that shit and keep arming us, but when the time comes, we're going to know who the enemies are. And we're going to make sure that we point the guns at the right people, not the wrong people. But yeah, that's, I guess, so God help the man. But yeah, God help the man too is like God help you. It's like, I guess this is like a very emotional, like, this is my, like, up to the edge of violence. Like, I'm saying, like, let's hang our treasonous leaders. But then I'm also saying, like, the corporate war profiteers. This is all that emotion in there, all that injustice and emotion. I'm not the only one who feels it. Other people feel it, and other people feel emotions enough to the point to, like, get this anxious. What is their outlet? Because I'm looking at my outlet, and I'm looking at the way that I try to keep the historic record to remind myself. And then when I read these now 10 years later, it brings up all these emotions that, like, I didn't have these when I was doing real estate. I had some of them, but they were really pushed down. Is that healthy psychologically? I'm curious as to how have other people been able to save parts of their humanity? How have other people sequestered? How have other people, what would I say, stored, not restored, but like how have other people salvaged their humanity in times of such deceit? I'm very curious. Mine has been through art, obviously. And when I read these, they're clever enough and they're interesting enough that I remember, like, I forgot we had over 100 bases in Iraq. I forgot most of what was in those Vampire in Iraq notes. And then you can say forgot or you can say suppressed. cognitive dissonance is a bitch. And, a fat ass and a nice life are decent rewards for towing the party line, for keeping your head out of politics, like some people would say. But and when that doesn't work, well, fucking, you can always just get a prescription for Xanax, right? But we're going to start a discussion. I'm starting a discussion with myself, which hopefully will be able to spread to other people, which offers some healing and more healthy views of humanity. An honest discussion. That's all we need in life in order to heal and to reach our potential is honest introspection, honesty and sincerity. I've always believed that. And God help the man who is dishonest with himself or who no longer believes in sincerity, because I think that's going to get in the way of the beauty that life has to offer. So that's just something I've learned over the years.